Welcome to the DCD broadcast experience. Our 9 content channels are dedicated to helping the people who plan, build, operate, and supply digital infrastructure to make better decisions in a fast-moving business environment. Our interactive broadcasts, like the one you're about to watch, are part of a year-round program of fresh and original, always-on content that give you the chance to listen to the industry's leading experts as they dissect the latest technology and trends. By becoming a channel subscriber, you get unrestricted access to a huge content library of interviews, editorial features, ebooks, supplements, daily news and analysis, and hundreds of hours of on-demand broadcasts. You'll also get access to exclusive roundtables and the ability to connect to other channel subscribers. Oh, and no more signing in every time you want to view or download a resource. The Enterprise Data Center channel, the Markets and Investment channel, Management and Operations, Telecoms and Networks, the Edge Computing channel, the Energy and Sustainability channel, Critical Power, Data Center Cooling, and the Data Center Construction channel. We've got it all covered. Whether you're a procurement professional or a design engineer, a CEO or an operations manager, our mission is to keep you informed and connected, because the world depends on digital infrastructure.
Hello, welcome to this panel sponsored by Asperitas, which will be addressing how data centers can deliver sustainable and reliable results by leveraging immersion cooling. I'm Alex Dickens, Channel Management Team Lead at DCD, and I am delighted to be moderating this discussion. Joining me for this timely talk, I am delighted to welcome 4 prominent speakers to the virtual stage. Amos Ankra from Boston Limited, Manpreet Chur from Intel, Puneeth Shiva Prasad from Shell, and last but not least, Michael Boricius from Asperitas. Before we get into the discussion, Michael will be setting the scene with a brief presentation. So over to you, Michael.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this presentation on immersion cooling, and thank you for DatacenterDynamics to hosting us. I'll provide some context for the discussion, and we'll be talking about data centers, how to leverage immersion cooling for sustainable operations. And let's dive into it right away. Data centers play a critical role in our society of today, more and more so. At the same time, there's a real urgency to create environmentally friendly and sustainable data centers. This comes across as energy efficiency, water consumption, heat reuse, different topics. But the real challenge we have here for the industry is to empower growth and improve sustainability at the same time. And we'll talk about it with the panel later on as well, and I'll show a little bit on what are the basics of immersion cooling addressing these challenges head on. So a little bit more on the challenges. There are 4 main ones. As Asperitas, as an immersion cooling solution provider, we like to tackle those with our solutions and support our customers with achieving objectives related to those 4 categories. The first one is sustainability. To do things in a bit more energy efficient way, enable heat reuse. At the same time, performance, that's the number 1 driver to adopt any form of liquid cooling, and primarily immersion cooling. We'll dive into that a little bit later on as well. At the same time, of course, data centers remain mission critical facilities. Reliability is key. What does it mean, reliability? Is that redundancy? Is that quality engineering, standard operating procedures? All of that, I would say. At the same time, then as well, a positive business case. Now with rising energy prices, especially in Europe, the case for adopting advanced cooling methods is really strong. So let's look at a few of the highlights. Why do we see adopters of liquid cooling and immersion cooling actually going in this direction today? Energy efficiency is key. This number 1 on a global level. We see that the PUE levels has been stabilized. That might seem good, but it actually means that there are no energy efficiency gains made on a global level regarding data centers anymore. Something has to be done there, and luckily, advanced cooling, immersion cooling can crack this code and make sure that actually energy efficiency gains are back on the table again. With immersion cooling, you can bring this down to as low as below 1.1 anywhere in the world. So that's a great case. We see that as the number 1 driver, and I think all of us, I think on a sustainability perspective, this is the real mission we should address and achieve with advanced cooling methods. Secondly, we see a challenge in the rack, but also on the server level. We see densities going up, especially on this graph on the screen. You see where we see the rack densities with liquid cooling users. If you compare that with an average user with traditional air-cooled environments still, we see the rack densities with liquid cooling drastically higher. And there are numbers of reasons for it. Research is also not showing everything. We see more and more environments with a limited number of servers in a rack, simply because we can't bring the airflow to cool down the systems anymore. And you can see that adopted liquid cooling users, they have a lot more runway to use if it comes to cooling capacity. And we see density of racks and servers and utilization going up in this type of environments. That's a great benefit, and that we see as the number 2 driver to adopting liquid cooling and immersion cooling in the next few years. Sustainability is something we will, I think, discuss with the panel quite thoroughly. And what does that mean? Until a few years ago, we saw energy efficiency as the number one. And as I mentioned before, it's still the number one driver to adopt liquid cooling. But sustainability as a whole is a lot more. And since recently, we see a lot other metrics coming up. And you might need to keep this in account as well. It becomes a regulation to monitor a lot of sustainability elements, energy efficiency, water consumption, as well heat reuse, of course the carbon footprint, and there are numbers of other metrics that will be obligatory or at least wished as well and required by users to monitor. And with immersion cooling, you can achieve a lot of those objectives connected with those metrics. So what are the top drivers for liquid cooling? Again, something I hope to discuss with the panel more thoroughly. Energy efficiency, I already mentioned it. Very interesting on the second driver place is reliability. And that's very interesting. It's a new technology for many users, but one of the drivers looking for a new technology is resiliency, reliability, quality, predictable environment under all circumstances, and immersion cooling can be also described as a very energy efficient infrastructure layer to build upon. So reliability is key and definitely one of the drivers to adopt the technology. Already mentioned, increasing workload demands is definitely going up. Compute demand in the data center, CPU, GPU workloads, next generations, something data centers really need to facilitate, and as well the different partners can help out with. We see numbers of reasons for liquid cooling, also regarding water consumption in some areas, TDPs on the chip level, limited power availability. So depending on the use case, immersion cooling can bring the benefits to your facility. So what is it actually immersion cooling can achieve? And this is just a quick summary. I mentioned that already. We can bring the PUE down drastically below 1.1. Water consumption, it doesn't have to be any more consumption. It can be just using the medium water for cooling, but in a closed loop, so nothing is lost. The energy footprint reduction will be drastically lower with very limited need for cooling, as well with high ambient temperatures. And the heat reuse potential can be extremely high with a high energy efficiency. More than 98% of the power in is as well being captured as a thermal energy source and can be utilized elsewhere. We also have seen cases where the utilization of CPUs and GPUs is dramatically higher. Again, depending on the use case, immersion cooling can bring different benefits to the table. And of course, with a positive business case, even just on energy consumption on an OPEX level, from day one, you can see those reductions being achieved. So what do we do as Asperitas? Just very brief, just to for the awareness, we are a system developer of immersion cooling systems with an innovative technology. Immersion cooling, single phase, natural convection driven. That means passive systems, a solution that's great in any application from edge to large scale facilities. And depending on what's the need, performance or sustainability, or a balance between the two, our solutions can help you out here. The system is very plug and play and can run as a standalone system and multiple systems in an environment. And it's a contained system on its own with all of the monitoring and safety requirements that you would require as a user. Just to set some examples of projects Asperitas deployed, just to give an idea of where this can be applied, and I guess we will discuss this with the panel in more detail, but you'll see this nowadays a lot in brownfield existing facilities That's where you want to start, most likely, and that can be easily done with immersion cooling. We also have seen optimized environments, very minimal data centers. You will see a lot of the traditional components and elements you'll find in a data center, not anymore. Raised floors, for example, is not something that's a requirement for immersion cooling, and actually nothing in the room can affect the performance of an immersion cooled system at all. Everything is about the system and what's happening in the system. Of course, this can be also deployed in containerized and prefab systems, and as well in on-site and on-premise deployments. You will find this in any kind of data center nowadays already. And of course, we can help out in finding the exact right use case and operational readiness level for you. So what does that mean? It can bring your data center a whole different perspective, from carbon neutrality to a performance achieved by precision cooling, cooling what you need to cool. So it's IT cooling primarily. You don't need to cool the data center as a room anymore. Reliability, we look a little bit different at reliability in terms of not only redundancy, there are more elements to take into account. A scalable design, you want something that you can scale from a standalone system in a modular way to a large scale facility, and in a very simple way where waste is not part of the process anymore. Immersion cooling can make all of those elements a little bit easier and really be a leap forward in terms of making your data center operational ready for the next future as well. So as Asperitas, we're a solution provider number one. Second, we like to support our users for the adoption. We'll discuss this in detail, what it means to get ready, and before deployment and during the operational phase until end of life. Asperitas is here to support you with services, tooling, and trainings. Of course, there's a lot more to learn, and we'll discuss some of the elements in this panel, but there's a lot of content around there, also on our website, to learn more about immersion cooling. Now I'm very happy to hand over to Alex and the panel and discuss all of those topics I just addressed.
All right, well, thank you very much for that introduction, Michael. So before we get into the main content of the panel, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves in a bit more detail. What role do each of you play in immersion cooling adoption process? Michael, I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. Asperitas, we're primarily immersion cooling solution provider. We develop systems that are reliable, high performing and sustainable. And at the same time, we offer services across the whole lifetime of an environment and in preparation of the customer and its facility to help them adopting immersion cooling as a technology.
Brilliant, thank you. And Puneeth, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Puneeth, based in Houston, so working as a product application specialist and technology manager for Shell Immersion Coolants. So we do manufacture immersion coolants for data center industry, and my role has been is to promote, and as well as I do work as a project lead for OCP for fluids and materials work stream. Driving this industry to come up with standardization so that it is easily adopted, this technology in the market.
Brilliant, and I'll hand over to you, Manfred.
Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, this is Manfred Chua. I'm with Intel, and Intel is absolutely focused on this whole kind of insatiable appetite for compute, and being a supplier of that compute, we are looking at providing that compute in the most environmentally responsible manner. I am in our future platform strategy office, which rolls into our chief product sustainability officer. And so, thank you for having us.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Amos.
Yes, and thank you very much for inviting me to this panel today. So my name's Amos Sankra. I work at Boston Limited, and we take all three of the aforementioned technologies. So we've been around for 30 years. We major in terms of Supermicro as a partner, taking Intel CPUs, and we work with customers to look at the use cases that we need to build technological solutions for, specializing in terms of high performance compute clusters and artificial intelligence, which typically drive large workloads, very, very heavy workloads. So then we take solutions driven by Asperitas and Shell in terms of the fluid within the Asperitas tanks, and we wrap everything together, in terms of understanding the customer requirement, doing the consultancy, and then delivering the end solution.
Fantastic, thank you. And that point you mentioned just there leads me nicely on into the first question I have for everyone, which will explore the relationship with clients. So what I want to understand is, how do you support the customers, and what is offered here that's different from other solutions out there? I understand that it's a whole life cycle approach. Michael, perhaps you can share your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So from our perspective, primarily we are a solution provider. It's hardware, immersion cooling tanks, and that's our specialty. At the same time, nowadays, every user is usually a first-time user. That means that we are very much involved in getting them ready to adopt a technology like this, and we work together with the partners that are today here on the panel for that as well. But you can imagine, for example, early on, we facilitate TCO calculations to make sure the business case is achieved. So we start with the use case, of course. We also offer remote testing facilities for the IT user, as well as on-site training and the whole experience to get to know the product from an operational level. Later on, of course, we offer as well support services for optimization and making sure this the environment that's running on immersion cooling is as predictable as it was designed for. Hardware, software, services, all related to immersion cooling.
Brilliant, and that all comes together to make a reliable solution. Fantastic. Puneet, I'll turn it over to you now. Could you share the material compatibility perspective?
Yeah, as Michael mentioned, so we work with Asperitas. I think our journey has started in the immersion industry with them. So I think this is a very critical piece to ensure we have a successful deployment. Material compatibility is a very big topic, even in the industry as well, because there are hundreds of components that gets immersed in the fluid. So our capability is to understand each of these components and test for their behavior with respect to whether the fluid and the component that is tested is compatible, and we provide this type of support to our customers. So that as a guide, so that they have this comfort before they do the deployment with our fluids. We also provide support to customers with respect to fluid testing as well, whether it is before and after deployment, to support the customer so that they have a full understanding of once deployed, the fluid is performing the way it should be. And also we collaborate if in case the deployment comes to end of life for the fluids as well, where we work with one of the equity players within Shell that we collect these fluids, and also we help in the circular economy for recycling the fluids as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Manfred, how are you helping your customers juggle the need for HPC, energy efficiency, whilst managing the increasing demand? How is immersion cooling helping tackle these issues?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, Intel has relationships across the ecosystem, and when we take a look at new technologies, right, especially something like immersion cooling that has such an amazing impact on performance and density and sustainability, we want to make sure that we can accelerate the adoption and also do that in a way that increases that adoption in an open standards type of way. And so we're very active in open standards groups like OCP, for example, that create the specifications and hopefully accelerate the ability of these technologies to get adopted. For example, right, we've recently developed a specification for immersion fluids, contributed it to OCP so that it can get widely deployed. And also, from a standpoint of whether you're an OEM or an ODM, or working at end customers or working with Asperitas or Shell, for example, we're working, POCs and also deployments globally, to showcase these benefits. And last year, at the end of the year, we even, deployed a warranty for immersion cooling for our processors, which I think is the first for any semiconductor company, to show the confidence we have, and also a sign of confidence that this is a technology that we believe in. So, we're definitely wanting to push the benefits of immersion, because we believe that is the right thing to do.
Fantastic, thank you. And Amos, what are you hearing from your customers? What projects are they working on that require immersion cooling?
Yeah, we're seeing that there are many questions being asked in the marketplace at the moment, because if you think about it, ever since the invention of IT, we've been cooling IT solutions with air. Okay, so we've reached a paradigm now in terms of shifting towards another medium to cool technologies which are becoming more and more powerful. So that in itself is causing a bit of confusion in the marketplace, because when you look out there, there are now many different ways to cool your technology, and even individual technology providers are starting to release their own new technologies. What I certainly found in my IT career is, historically, organizations don't like proprietary solutions. They do not like being locked in. So from our perspective, we're looking to consult, we're looking to help customers evaluate the marketplace and choose the correct solutions to meet their use cases. And we feel that by working with Asperitas, Shell and Intel, we have track record in terms of delivering solutions with the three companies. And also, we can take it forwards in terms of, you're looking in the news today where organizations are looking at how potentially that heat can be recycled. So instead of cooling a data center and needing that energy to provide the cooling, they now have a new benefit in terms of being able to take that heat and be able to recycle it. So we're seeing things like municipal swimming pools that are being cooled, so they're being heated. We're seeing homes that can be heated by the recycled heat. So we have a role to play in terms of pulling the technologies together and then providing that end-to-end solution, which addresses the use case and then results in being able to recirculate and reuse that heat in terms of then providing a real sustainability story.
Fantastic, thank you so much, Amos. So that actually leads me on to my next question quite well. I want to ask, how does immersion make the data center more sustainable? Amos, I'll stay with you for a minute. You've spoken about the heat reuse opportunities, but beyond that, what other factors can provide benefits through immersion cooling?
Yeah, I think one of the main benefits is it's not just the CPU that's increasing in power these days. So there are ancillary components within the system that are also contributing to the power requirements within IT as a whole. So one of the massive benefits of immersion technologies is that it creates an environment that can cool absolutely everything and then efficiently recycle the heat for reuse within that organization. So that's probably the key thing that we're seeing in terms of sustainability. Also as well, what organizations don't want to do. So we've had examples of working with organizations that are looking to save the world in terms of the technologies they're deploying. They're looking to really include the sustainability story as part of their own business narrative. And what they don't want to be doing is on one end of the scale, save the world, but on the other end of the scale, deploy IT, which is destroying the world. So again, by incorporating immersion-based cooling, we can really make a solid proposition around sustainability.
Fantastic. Yeah, it seems as though it's going to help with that balancing act and sort of tip it the right way. Fantastic. So, Manfred, what are the sustainability considerations when you're installing immersion cooling systems?
Yeah, I think what I liked about what Michael had shown in his presentation is he did address some of these notions of, hey, do I need to be setting up a whole new data center, or potentially could I put it in a brownfield scenario where I'm retrofitting? And there is a lot of just with any new technology, right? There's a lot of fear and misinformation out there. So I'm glad that Michael had shown both scenarios. From our perspective, because liquid is a better cooling medium than air, and in general, right, the opportunity to optimize a data center, because at the data center level, right, you can do so many different things once you're optimizing a technology. For us, immersion cooling, liquid cooling and immersion cooling, really provide a no compromises type of situation, because you can, depending on who are you or your priorities. For example, are you trying to cut costs? Are you trying to hit performance levels? Are you trying to hit density levels? Are you trying to stay within real estate? All of these things you can say yes to. And by the way, you're also doing that in the most environmentally responsible manner, in the most sustainable manner possible. And there's very few times when the disparate groups can come together and check off the yes box, right? And so this is one of these things that I look at and say, hey, I love win-win situations, and this is absolutely a win-win situation. Now, it does take getting to that next level of analysis and detail and rolling up the sleeves and saying, okay, what does the server consolidation picture look like? What does the workload look like? And we need to go do the work. But once we get there, I think the team here has a ton of experience going through that, and I guess I can't stress enough kind of the testing that we have done and we continue to do around immersion. And I think you've got another question later on, Alex. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there is a ton of testing in the background that's being done to go and increase the confidence that we all have around the technology. So deploying it hopefully will at some point be as easy of a question as air cooled today.
Fantastic, thank you. And yes, we'll circle back to that point you alluded to in a minute. But Puneet, I want to hear the Shell perspective as well. What's your company doing to aid data centers in the sustainability journey? And as we see the rise of immersion cooling, there's more and more discussion around how sustainable coolant fluids actually are. How do you fully assess their life cycle? I know you alluded to a couple of points earlier on.
Yeah, I think sustainability is a very important topic for Shell. We have set a target by 2050. We want to be carbon neutral company. So data center industry is one of the areas where we are heavily involved to ensure that we provide eco-friendly fluids, the dielectric fluids to be used as immersion coolants. We work with all the partners here listed, Intel, then Boston, Asperitas, because they are all part of the ecosystem where we work with. Before we promote our products, we want to ensure that they feel comfortable using these products in the first place. To add to your question, I think other thing we also work, we don't want to be, told in the market that we're just being a fluid supplier, but we actually want to be an integrated solution provider in this data center industry. For example, we are offering renewable power to this industry by involving our power team, which is also part of Shell, where the power is generated through either solar or wind, so that we help the customers to reduce their consumption of power based on fossil energy. Then the other thing we are also working, as I said before, is that once these fluids are deployed, when it reaches end of life, then the bigger question in the data center industry, which is understanding as we speak is how to deal with these fluids. And we are now working with a recycling company within US, and we want to translate this to other regions in the world, where we collect these fluids and we re-refine by recycling, as well as then bring it to market so that it can be used as a sort of a industrial based fluids, so that it is not either used as a fuel or it is being dumped in landfills. So we are thinking about the holistic view of like how we can play a critical role in this market to provide sustainable solutions to the market.
Fantastic. Michael, I'll come back to you. Could you talk a little bit more about the sustainability perspective at Asperitas? In your opening presentation, you spoke about PUE. So how exactly can metrics help, and what should data centers be looking at? What can we learn from, various metrics when it comes to adopting more efficient technologies?
Yeah, good question. And this is a big topic. I think we could spend easily an hour on this with the same panel. I would love to as well. But I think there are a few things, and I think the different speakers here already addressed some of the elements. But I think the first thing to keep in mind for data centers and the users and the operators is that regulations will be coming very soon, right? In Europe, for example, we have the Energy Directive coming. What does that mean? It means that you will need to monitor and manage a lot of different metrics as a data center operator. Not only the very large facilities, everything above probably 0.5 megawatt of power capacity already needs to apply different metrics to monitor the performance. So there's not only energy efficiency, there's water consumption, heat reuse potential, utilization, and as well, you need to be able to show how you improve and increase the optimization basically over years, right? So it starts with measuring all of that. I would say that's a really good start because then you can manage it, and you have to make choices on which solutions to apply, of course, and adopt to improve. The good news is immersion cooling can cover different kind of metrics and improve your operational performance from various type of perspectives, right? So already your energy footprint will be better. Water consumption will be non-existent. Heat reuse potential can be a lot higher. So depending on the use case, the location, local circumstances, and regulations, immersion cooling can bring different elements to the table. And I think that's one of the things to consider, to pick a solution that can help out in different areas, because it is an innovative solution, and that's always quite a right to adopt. But you can pick one that can bring you a big leap forward, right? And the last thing I would like to point out is as well, and I'm sure that everyone here is quite excited about it as well, is new concepts if it comes to data centers and how we design and operate and build them. Of course, so far in the next few years, we will see adoption also of immersion cooling, but also other technologies in existing facilities. It will be extremely exciting to see what the new kids on the block will come up with, adopting this type of technologies. You can imagine data centers looking very different, operating in a very different way, see them in different places, not only on very large scale to gain energy efficiency gains. And we see that already. We see quite some innovative concepts coming up. Some people call it edge, but definitely a more decentralized setup, connecting them with, indeed, as Amos as well pointed out, where is the heat required? So those are energy and compute concepts combined. So that's going to be very exciting in the next few years. On the short term, I often get that question, how to get started. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are also networks you can learn from. Manfred pointed out OCP, Open Compute. It's a great network to be involved in and to see what's happening there in terms of guidelines and standards as well regarding sustainability. In Europe, you have the European Code of Conduct. It's including all of the measures you can take as a data center that has some kind of sustainable impact. It's a great guideline. And as well, an organization like the Sustainable Digital Infrastructure Alliance, they have a great roadmap, different solution areas you can look into as a data center operator and user, from e-waste to renewable power, as Punit as well pointed out, as a potential solution. There's a whole set and range of solutions that can help you there, right? So your data center can be a lot more sustainable going forward.
Fantastic, thank you, Michael. And Manfred, we'll now revisit the point that you touched upon earlier. But in terms of immersion cooling deployments, how do they vary between greenfield and brownfield sites? And can you give any use cases or examples of those?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have specific ones, just because unfortunately we're bound by a bunch of NDAs with our customers. But what I would say is, in terms of brownfield and greenfield discussions, for a long time, there was this notion that something like immersion is so disruptive, right? Because these are big tanks with big fluids, and suddenly we need to go and re-architect an entire data center. So you know what? If you're a data center operator, let's just go and think about if I'm going to build a new data center. So it was really just a greenfield discussion. But the more we've engaged with the industry, the more that, frankly, because the requirement is there, right? The TDPs of components are getting higher, and it's not just the processors, but when you take a look at the total TDP, or the total power that needs to be managed. So that's the processor, the graphics, memory, etc. The solutions need to catch up, right? And so when you've got innovation happening, we're starting to find ways where, wait a minute, it doesn't take an entire retrofit, it doesn't take a greenfield situation. And when people start looking at the details, and I think it was in one of our conversations, Michael was saying it's actually more complicated to go and raise the floor and do the air ducting for a new section of a data center for air cooled, for example. And actually, when you also think about the requirements of having a cold aisle and a hot aisle, and doing the HVAC for that in a traditional data center, and then also having the overhead in terms of all the chillers and the power that you need to go and optimize around that, you start seeing really kind of the two factors of, one, there's just the overall optimization benefits of saying, okay, if you go immersion cooling, and you can optimize to kind of one kind of ambient temperature, then you have dividends of benefit. Yeah, and so you're not just getting the benefit of the power directly from the infrastructure of the immersion, but also at the data center level as well. And so I think that once people start seeing that benefit, and also just the reality that when servers get optimized for immersion, there aren't any fans. The heat sinks are cheaper, and so it's something that takes time, because this is still a newer technology. But as that time goes along, the costs will start working themselves out. And so I think that the journey we're still on that journey, of course. But I think that and I think Amos, I feel like you're on the front line, so you're going to see this as you work through the various implementations. But we're seeing it globally as we have our engagements. We have both greenfield and brownfield engagements worldwide, and so that's something that we need to continue to look at and promote.
Fantastic, thank you. So I'm going to move the conversation along a little bit and focus now on how reliable immersion cooling technology is. Michael alluded to this earlier in the presentation, so I want to ask him to dig a little bit deeper into this point. So, I mean, you spoke earlier about kind of partnering with your customers, and there's quite a big education piece there. But how are you working closely with your clients, to ensure reliability is embedded into their organisation, and how does this link back to the total cost of ownership?
Yeah, good question, and I think all of the partners here on the call play a role in that, and we happily work together with them in different stages of the customer life cycle, I would say. One thing probably to point out is that immersion cooling is for many users a new technology to adopt, but as a technology concept is not new, right? And all of the partners here, we have a track record in testing it, validating it, deploying it, fine-tuning it, optimizing it. So I just want to point it out as a technology. This is a very proven and reliable technology used by different type of users. From Asperitas' point of view, we designed the solution specifically for enterprise class users with a compute demand. So they both have strong requirements in terms of a business operational type of level, but as well the performance, right? So if you combine those two, you can imagine that the quality engineering and so on will offer the reliability that's required. At the same time, we see reliability as the one element that adopters and users don't feel just ready for. One, they can't estimate what it actually means for them because redundancy plays a really strong part in the data center industry from an operational point of view. And reliability and redundancy, they're two different beasts. So we take the effort to explain it as well and show them what reliability means in terms of immersion. But one thing we start with is the use case, right? Understanding the user, where will this technology end up? Who needs to be prepared? One of the things we do is look at the different stakeholders involved, especially in large operations. There's a large variety of stakeholders from installation of systems, maintaining it, remote hand services. And as with Asperitas, we prepare those users and stakeholders with trainings and educations and know-how exchange. And that's how we have been working together for now several years already with the likes of Shell and Boston and Intel. There has been a lot of work on the background, and users can benefit from that today. So that's, I would say, that's what I would like to bring across. There's a lot more to discuss, but I'm sure the different panelists will bring that forward as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And Manfred, to continue this line of questioning, there's so many people involved in the immersion cooling supply chain, but sort of digging deeper toward the total cost of ownership, how do you work out who's responsible for each element to kind of pass on that confidence to the client?
That's a great question. I mean, today, I think that the solutions have been pulled together, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of innovation, and so our OEMs and our ODMs are pulling together servers. Are making them available to be immersed, and they're taking on honestly, they're taking on the risk and putting their own warranties on it. And what we did, and all through last year, we were kind of scratching our heads and saying, well, I think that let's gather data, right? We need to get the data. We have a tremendous amount of rigor when it comes to our quality and reliability. I think our quality and reliability team, by the way, is probably like the only organization that's more rigorous than our legal team, I think. Anyway, and when you take a look at the process that we took to look at immersion cooling, we took a look at a tremendous amount of data last year, and we decided that we had enough to feel comfortable in actually doing a warranty around our processors that were being put in immersion cooling systems. And so in doing so, we wanted to help alleviate concerns for end customers that were choosing to go this route, and also help accelerate the adoption, because not only were the warranties and all of the liability getting passed down the line, but that there were also questions in terms of, well, why are the component manufacturers not getting on board either? And so I think we wanted to just send a strong signal to the industry that yes, we're going to go and warranty our processors. Now, moving forward, of course, we're continuing to do testing, right? I mean, I think Asperitas and Shell are close partners with us, and we have you know, a lot of discussions around testing and also the sharing of data around the testing that we're all individually doing. I mean, when I take a look at the solutions that you've seen in the photos that you've seen from Michael in the previous presentation, I can only imagine the thousands of hours of testing that has gone into making sure that those solutions are reliable, high performance, because it's not just about material compatibility, it's also the long-term reliability. I mean, will that, you know, will that electrical signal go through that system in the same type of strength and in the same type of consistency, not just on day one, but in year 5, in year 7, and, you know, and whatever, you know, capacity, right? And that's what's important. And being able to, you know, do that regression testing, do that type of confidence, so that we can all look at our end customer, our joint customer, and say, hey, this is something that you want to bet on. This is something you want to redesign your data center or start transforming your data center into something that's higher performance, higher density, higher sustainability, and lower cost, right? So, you know, it's one of those things where we want to make sure that we continue to drive that.
Fantastic, thank you. Amos, earlier in the talk, you mentioned that clients don't want to get stuck with one vendor. So, you know, as we kind of see the move toward immersion cooling, you know, is equipment being developed in a standardized way to avoid this? And also, how does that help ensure reliability when choosing a new technology?
Yeah, a couple of great questions there. So I would say, firstly, because you're seeing a transition now between a less dense media, which is air, to a more dense media, which is liquid, there's a lot of planning and development that has to be done by the various companies to be able to embrace that. And I would say probably an analogy is in terms of, in the server world, virtualization. So certainly when I started off in IT, or a few years after I started off in IT, no one would consider running production in a virtualized environment. Whereas you hop to these days, virtualization is widespread across the board. And in fact, we now have cloud computing. So that just goes to show how technologies move over time. At the moment, when you look at the different server manufacturers, many of them still develop in terms of air cooling. So you're starting to see that change. So some organizations are now developing systems which are built specifically for immersed cooling technology solutions. And we will see more of that over time, just in the same way that organizations started embracing virtualization in years gone by. And what that means in terms of customer experience is, I mean, firstly, we can work with customers, and we can demonstrate in terms of our use cases that immersion technologies work. And there's nothing like being able to say to a customer, well, we've done it before, so we know it works. What we're still looking at are the nuances around component supportability. Things like fans. You can't have fans in a liquid environment because of the resistance of those fans. And so there are going to be certain technologies which haven't been optimized for immersion, but will be in the future with the adoption of liquid cooling across the board. And what our role is to support customers to make sure that they're fully aware that we're going to work with them to develop a fully supported solution for immersion, and then give them the same sort of customer experience that previous customers have had that we've worked with before in terms of deployments which have been in place for years, with all cooling the equipment nicely, recycling the heat nicely, etc., etc.
Great, thank you. And Puneet, I want to understand how fluids are evolving and how are they being monitored to guarantee performance. It's quite a new area for a lot of people in the market.
Absolutely. This is a very important topic to be discussed, because today the fluids that we manufacture, we have generated a lot of deployment data we can share with the customers to give them the confidence. I think we work with all the partners in the panel here. I think what Manfred said, I really like. It's all about data driven, right? You can, data has to speak by itself, and because it's an industry where there's millions of dollars has been invested for the hardware, and we want to ensure that those systems run for many years. The information that we generally share with our customers is that material compatibility is one of the key issues in the beginning, but once deployed, then the customer expectation is to see that the cooling performance remains intact. And how do we ensure quality along the way from the reliability of the fluids itself standpoint? I think we are now working with Asperitas, for example, on remote sensors. We are working with Intel as we speak to see that the requirements for this industry is to understand at any given real time, the customers can actually see on the screen how the fluid is behaving when it is deployed. So this is a very important topic, because the fluid suppliers generally tend to go once in a while, collect the samples when the customers are in requirement, and run the full analysis and say whether the fluid is behaving the way it is or not. But I think things can go wrong in the meantime. So this is where this technology can be very critical, because the last thing we want is that we don't address the challenges we already have. And if something goes wrong, then that will have a huge impact on this technology in the market itself, which we don't want. I think this is a very evolving industry, and there is a lot of new developments happening, whether it is from the next generation chips perspective or server perspective. So we have to be up to speed. We have the current fluids that will meet the today's requirement, but we are also having a roadmap where we are developing newer fluids with based on gas to liquid technology, is to meet those demands. And we work with all the partners here, because they will play a critical role in telling us whether those such fluids are meeting the needs of the future. If not, then we need to go back and revisit and work with our own internal manufacturing team to define or develop something new that addresses the need of the future for the hardware. I think this is a very important topic, and this has come many times, even in OCP as well. How the reliability of these technology needs to be evaluated. So we are working on it, and I would say I think more information will be published this year during the white paper, and will be shared for in the annual meeting.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So we've only got about 5 minutes left. So for this final slide, I'm going to have to ask you to keep your answers a little bit brief. But how do you see the future of immersion cooling, and what's the best way of getting going in the journey? Manfred, where do we start?
Yeah, well, I think that if you're looking at it, I mean, I'm sure that you're probably being faced with either the rising cost of energy, you're either looking at the regulatory environment, whether you're in, of course, in Europe with the sustainability regulations, or if you're in another part of the world. We're all looking at Europe and looking at our own jurisdictions and anticipating the regulatory environment changing. We have our own kind of corporate net zero targets that are being announced, and we need to go and figure out how we support the net zero requirements that our own corporations are doing. So either way, we have a perfect storm that we have to. It's the perfect storm, call to action, whatever you want to call it, that is driving us to consider changes to our infrastructure. I think the best way to start is really, I think, engaging any of the partners that are here. I think we're here to help. I mean, Intel specifically, of course, we've published white papers on this topic that are pretty informative. I mean, and anywhere you are in this journey, I think it'll be pretty relevant. But I also encourage anybody to form a partnership, with, whether it's with Shell, with Boston, with Asperitas. If you already have a partner, and also if you take a look at how you want to also look at where you are in terms of the priorities. If you have certain workloads that need to stay within your own data centers, then I think you're really going to like this technology, because it allows you to, as I said, no compromises, right? You've got performance, density, you can save on real estate because of the consolidation and the workload optimizations, and you can hit sustainability targets and save cost. And when you look at all of that, then it helps you in your overall journey. But you have to, start with, kind of getting smart and choosing a good, reliable strategic partner. And any one of the partners here, Boston, Asperitas, Shell, or of course, Intel's always here to be a trusted advisor to you.
Thank you. And Puneeth, what does the evolution of coolants look like, and what should those looking to implement immersion cooling keep in mind going forwards?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would say there is a lot of discussions about this PFAS related. This is coming up with ECHA proposal. There is a lot of discussions about two-phase, where if they are having fluorination methodology used to make those products, then there is a lot of pushback in the market as to whether to continue doing research on those fluids, or should we dedicate more time with single phase, which is environmental friendly. So coolants, has been a sort of an evolving as we speak from the technology per se. There are a lot of technologies which is already proven. We are manufacturing gas to liquid, but I think if there is a pushback on not to go for forever chemicals, we call them, then within the single phase fluids, are there fluids that can meet the needs of maybe up to say 1,000 watts per chips? I think we are now trying to discuss about, can we cool to that capacity? I think that's where we are really looking inside Shell from the development standpoint, from the roadmap perspective. But I think the most important thing here is awareness to the market, showcasing the best practices that is already been existed, done, deployed, and showcased. We need to talk about as collectively within this ecosystem, because everybody plays a key role, not just Shell, but all the partners here in this panel, because it is, if we go collectively as a strategic partners, that's the only way we can influence this market. We can only pitch about fluids, but it is only, it can go so far in influencing decision making with the end user, moving away from air to liquid or for immersion. So for us, it's we have taken a collective stand is to work with all the partners and make sure that we promote ourselves, our technology, what we bring to the market, considering our global footprint from the supply perspective of our fluids, and work with the innovation team with other companies here as we, in the panel, to make sure that we have a good offering from the coolants perspective in the immersion industry.
Fantastic, thank you. And Amos, back to you. Will standardization be the catalyst for immersion cooling at scale?
Yes, yeah, I think very much so. So in terms of standardization, looking at the many different offerings in the marketplace these days, and having attended various events recently, that they're still being invented and new novel ways are being generated. But you typically find, as technology hits kind of the phase of adaptation, when it becomes mainstream, you tend to find that many technology providers fall by the wayside, and there is a level of standardization and commonality in terms of the components, and the various companies that technology companies partner with. So I'd definitely say you're going to start seeing that in the years to come when it comes to immersion cooling.
Brilliant, thank you. And Michael, you get the final word. When can we expect immersion cooling to become mainstream? A bit of a crystal ball moment. So.
Yeah, and it's a good question, of course. Not sure if it's the right question, Alex. To be fair, I think the right question is what is the right solution, right? Being mainstream is not the goal in itself. I think at this moment in time, I saw something interesting today. It was an outcome of an Uptime Institute report where it was stated that at least 1/3 of the data center operators and users feel themselves that they are not ready to facilitate high density workloads. And keep that in mind. It means that this is the moment to get ready, right? How to do that? My advice would be to map out 3 things as a user. What are your sustainability objectives in the next few years? Get a roadmap on that. What are your performance requirements in the next few years? And where do you see your workloads being facilitated, in which location and what kind of facility? If you know those 3 things for the next few years, then all of the partners on the call today can help you out in finding the right solution for your use case, right? From that moment on, it's a matter of gaining experience via remote testing and on-site experiences, start piloting, and then building your scaled out plan. To look in the future, so a little bit of a crystal ball, Alex, maybe not when it will be mainstream, but how much time is there actually? And what we think and what we get back from different partners is that there's about 1 hardware generation now to get ready for adoption, right? And that's not such a long time. You start looking into it now, get the know-how, get trained, and get informed about standard operation procedures. And all of us, all of the panelists here can help you out in that. But start the journey today, right? I think Manfred called it a journey. We're in there now, but you have to start it today. And we'll see if it will become mainstream, but definitely it's a right solution for a lot of use cases we discussed today.
Fantastic, and I think that's a good way to wrap it up. And I'm afraid that is all we have time for. Thank you so much to our audience for tuning in, and thanks to everyone on the panel for sharing their perspectives and coming together to address this topic. It was really great speaking to you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
So, to our audience, if you do have any questions, the Asperitas team, as well as the rest of the panel, would be delighted to discuss this in more detail offline, so please reach out to them. We'll be continuing this conversation in the broadcast shortly, so we'll see you soon. Thank you.